Hello! So, yesterday was another exciting night of basketball. So much action was everywhere, and the main game I happened to watch that night was Celtics versus Knicks, as I am a Boston fan, and I'll get to that game later on in this video, but what's the nicest way I could put it? It wasn't great, simple as that. The Knicks had won in somewhat dominating fashion, and if I'm being honest, I wasn't really ready to watch any more basketball after that. But still, I wanted to catch the rest of the live game, see what I'm missing out on, and as I'm scrolling down on that long list, I happened to see out of the corner of my eye, Washington commanding a huge lead over the Dallas Mavericks in the third quarter. I was like, hold on. Talk about an unexpected but pleasant surprise. Having this type of game, that's the epitome of an underdog surprise, so I wanted to catch up, and fortunately I was able to watch the rest of the third and fourth quarters. I wanted to give a shout out to the Wizards because I got my joy back watching and cheering them on. Nothing against Dallas, but just seeing the Wizards being able to execute on their offense, being able to take advantage of Dallas's many turnovers, already notching their first win of the season, that was a pretty fun journey. But there was one notable factor that stood out, one player that made his presence known. Kyshawn George, man, talk about a dominating performance. He ended that game with 34 points, hitting 7 out of his 9 3-point attempts, grabbing 11 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, 3 blocks. I'll put the whole stat line up here. It was seriously so unbelievable. When you talk about who was the best player in a game that was filled with talents with the likes of Anthony Davis, Cooper Flagg, Kyshawn George was the #1 star of the night. And even though he did end up with this really impressive stat line, I kind of missed out on most of it because like I mentioned earlier, I only tuned in to like the middle of the third quarter. So I wanted to see how he was getting all of this efficiency, because in terms of starting off and making a name for himself, like he's already off to a tremendous start. So when I rewatched the recaps this morning and trying to see how Kyshawn and Washington were faring against Milwaukee and Dallas, there were quite a lot of surprising aspects, and some I could see being easily carried throughout this whole season. One of these surprises is him being handed the point guard duties, or maybe not point guard, point forward, because when you look at his size and stature and seeing they have other guards like Bob Carrington, CJ McCollum, I didn't really expect Kyshawn to handle majority of their pick and rolls, and not just in terms of finding his own shot, but also finding his open teammates. And I'm not going to say that every possession was perfect, but majority of those he made the right decisions. I'm not sure if this was something the Wizards produced in their game plan for last season, but from what I've seen, not only is Kyshawn producing great results, he just looks so comfortable. There were many times where it felt like he never really got rushed. He dictated his own pace, always managed to put the defenders behind him, like around his waist. And quite possibly the biggest positive I took away from this point forward situation was his knack to draw fouls. I mentioned that he has quite a big frame. He uses that to his advantage. When he feels someone on his waist, he leans into that and forces the refs to blow the whistle. And when he's also driving, especially a lot of times on smaller defenders, he makes sure to put his shoulder down first and exaggerate a lot of contact. He did it a ton during the Milwaukee game. He did it quite a few times against Dallas. And honestly, not only is this really intelligent, it feels like a veteran move. A lot of the times when I see players that are very great at drawing fouls, they lean their shoulder in, and that movement always gives the impression that defenders are making more contact than they really are. So the fact that I'm seeing Kyshawn doing more of this and getting a lot of calls his way, that's honestly a really great sign, especially for someone as young as he is. Not to mention, it seems like he added more strength to his game than the prior season. It's just a really great thing to see because he is bigger than a lot of the guards and forwards in this league. So seeing him utilize this body and stature to his advantage, whether it's capitalizing on mismatches or be more willing to get in the driving lanes and provoke a lot of contact, it's just, I'm such a big fan of that. To me, there's something encouraging and relieving about the fact that a player realizing he has a strength that can not only be utilized for his benefit, but for the benefit of the team if he keeps employing that. And Kyshawn is not only employing it, he's embracing it. Like, I just love the overall aggressiveness. Also, I feel like him figuring out his own pace, going at his own speed in the pick and rolls is another super crucial thing to work on, because he isn't really the fastest player, but how he uses his teammates' screens, how he navigates angles, figures out positions, it is a very promising trait to have, and I'm very glad that we're seeing more of it as Kyshawn gets more pick and roll duties. Another very positive thing about him is his defense. I did not expect him to be such a solid two-way threat. I mentioned earlier how his size can get him easy looks and trips to the free throw line. It's also helping him hold his own on the defensive side of the ball. result, with just him not being pushed around as much as their opponents initially thought, combined with a few nice moments of defensive awareness, he just manages to make things incredibly difficult for the offense. I mean, just yesterday, he was guarding Anthony Davis on a lot of possessions, and for the most part, it was successful. He was being very physical when AD was trying to post him up. AD couldn't really get the best positioning at times. There was even a couple of moments where Kyshawn was full court pressing him, like never making AD feel comfortable. How Coach Keefe utilizes him too is quite interesting because in the beginning moments of the game, you would see Kyshawn on the likes of AD and Giannis. The main purpose is for an additional defender to come in and forcing the opposing star's teammates to really beat them. But even with all of that, Kyshawn has shown enormous potential of being that type of defender because of his increased ability on defense. And again, he doesn't really get moved that much. I mean, even when he's not guarding opposing all-stars, I've seen other players try to move him out of the way or think that posting him up will result to an easy look. And usually the exact opposite happens. That's how Kyshawn got a lot of his steals and blocks. So initially, when Kyshawn was tasked with this increased responsibility and workload on the defensive end, I thought that would have been too much. I thought that was a lot for George to handle. But credit to him, he's proven me wrong and shown that he's more than capable enough to step up to that challenge. But even with all of this praise I'm giving him, it still feels like an understatement with how much of an impact he's making on defense. Like, you guys have to watch him to see how special he is on that front, and I feel like with more progress and development in the future, he'll be such an important piece and connector on that aspect. And one final thing, his three-pointers, I mean, obviously the percentages he's shooting at this moment are not really sustainable, but golly, again, just him looking so comfortable, he's taking and making them with ease, especially pull-up threes. I know that catch and shoots are the main focus when the discussion gets brought up of how significant threes are to a team, but in my opinion, pull-up three-pointers are just as important, and I feel like they don't get talked about enough, especially with how much they can damage drop coverages. And again, second game out of 82 is pretty small sample size, but there have already been quite a few possessions where he's really showing no fear. He's very solid with his shooting form, and who knows what will happen in the future, but the potential is so enticing. You know, coming off of screens or dribbling in transition and finding out that there's open space, just the fact that he's really effective with this out of the gate, that's such a great sign, and I'm really hoping that it continues this way. Kyshawn George being a pull-up threat alongside him working on catch and shoots, gosh, that will just make him such an unbelievable threat, and I am not kidding when I'm saying I am super looking forward to what he's doing next. So yeah, I just want to give all of this love to Kyshawn George because he is putting out a heck of a performance and is looking like one of the best players early on in the season. Man, Washington, you got a good one. You got a great one. Also really liking how Trey Johnson isn't just afraid to let it fly. He just happens to be another underrated rookie from this loaded 2025 draft class. Speaking of, that gets to the silver lining of that Celtics and Knicks game I referred at the beginning. The Knicks' revitalized offense was one of the main factors leading them to victory. They really killed us on the glass. Like, they had almost triple the amount of offensive rebounds as we did. Josh Hart, he had 14 rebounds coming off the bench, I mean. And Joe, as much as I love him for being a madman, sometimes he's a little bit too much of a madman because there was a time, I don't know if it was third or fourth quarter, where he deployed Chris Boucher as the 5, and not long after that there were times where it felt like, I mean, especially on one specific possession, Cat had like 3 or 4 or 5 offensive rebounds on his own. Like, I know it was time to move on from Horford and Cornette, but I missed their rebounding so much. Our lack of dribble penetration, it kind of drove me crazy. I mean, besides that one specific moment where Anthony Simons was able to penetrate the lane and kick it out for an open Derek White 3, nothing else was similar to that nature. We had 0 free throws attempted in the third quarter because we were just not putting enough pressure. So that's my whole rant. But the silver lining, and I want to end this video on a good note, Hugo Gonzalez, I love him. I am now a fan. During the third quarter, he pretty much sparked a huge momentum for Boston, almost all by himself, with his defense and hustle, you know, stuff that was what made him enticing on the scouting report. Pretty much all of that alongside a couple of nice layups. And although the comeback fell short, I just loved what I saw from him, especially since this was his debut essentially. He did not play a single bit against Philadelphia, so seeing him start with this much tenacity and ferocity, I feel like we need so much of that, especially this Boston team. It really needs that type of energy and flow. And I do want to clarify, it wasn't a perfect night for him. You know, there were a couple of miscommunications, and he happened to guard Brunson on majority of his playing time. So that's definitely not an easy task. But still, I could feel the impact. I could feel his grit radiating through the screen. So yeah, that was the video. Kyshawn George looks amazing, and for Boston, we gotta figure some stuff out, but we do have some nice stuff. Like, it could be worse. But let me know what you guys think. How do you feel about Kyshawn George, the Wizards in general? Are you excited for their future? Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.